Good day, folks, and welcome back to the channel. First of all, no, I do not have the lowrider back. It's still sitting at the dealership, but I thought I would use some footage for this video that I shot before the bike left, so it's more of a nostalgia thing for me because I have no faith that the dealership or the Harley Davidson Motor Company will get their clown show together anytime soon. Anyway, after doing the video on the state of Harley Davidson and my current state of mind, and that I do not plan on buying another Harley Davidson, the thought came to me that if not a Harley, then what would I get? So that got me thinking, and so this video, I'm going to go through a few bikes that I would look at if I was going to get a new bike. I'd also be interested to know what bikes you folks out there would choose, so let me know in the comments. The first bike I would look at is what I would consider to be somewhat of a fat boy on steroids, and that would be the Triumph Rocket 3R. I'll get to the fat boy comparison shortly, but first let's talk about the performance of this bad boy. This bike makes 165 horsepower and 163 foot-pounds of torque. Now that may not be too surprising given that this bike has a 3-cylinder and almost 2500 cc or close to 152 cubic inch motor. Although the style isn't what I'm usually used to, the look doesn't turn me off either. The reason I consider this bike to be more of a fat boy on steroids is based on a few things. This is a wide bike, just as a fat boy is. Both bikes, in running condition, are going to weigh in around that 700-pound mark. And the other thing that these bikes have in common is wide tires. Both bikes have the 240 rear tire, but the Triumph's front tire comes in a little narrower at the 150 rather than the 160 of the fat boy. This bike starts at just under $28,000 Canadian or around $23,900 US. Now that's more than the fatty until you start pricing out the add-ons that you'd usually put on a Harley. But I'd be interested to see how this bike actually handles with all that power and those fat tires. The next bike I would look at is what I consider the Harley Lowrider's competition, and that is the Indian Sport Chief. The Sport Chief comes with a 116 cubic inch engine, putting out 120 foot-pounds of torque and about 80 horsepower. So not quite the Lowrider's numbers, but it's definitely enough to kill yourself with, which is all I really need. The Sport Chief is a little heavier than the Lowrider, but only by about 15 pounds. But where it really wins for me is the price. This bike comes in roughly a couple of $1,000 Canadian anyway, less than the Harley. And I've not historically been a fan of Indian motorcycles, but the styling in this bike really looks good to me. So this, in my opinion, would be a good replacement for the Lowrider S. So coming up next would be the Suzuki Boulevard M109R Boss, BOSS. Now what does that stand for, you ask? It stands for Blacked Out Suzuki Special. This thing comes with a 1783 cc or 109 cubic inch liquid cooled V-twin, putting out 128 horsepower and 118 foot-pounds of torque. Now that's not quite as wild of numbers as the Rocket 3, but it's pretty damn good regardless. This bike also has the 240 rear tire, but it has a much slimmer 130 in the front. It's a very sleek, muscular looking bike, and the price is nice too. The Boss starts at $17,599 Canadian or lists at $15,599 US. Where the bike loses it a little for me is the weight. The M109R weighs in at just over 764 pounds, and I would prefer to keep the bike weight at about 700 or lower if possible. Now, last but not least is one that you may not expect, and that's the BMW R18 Roctane. I honestly do not know what it is about this bike that appeals to me, but it seems to just have that certain something. I think it's probably because it looks so odd to me. And the reason for it looking odd would be that 1802cc or 110 cubic inch boxer engine. And what is a boxer engine? Well, generally on bikes we have the V-twins or even inline engines. These engines have the pistons generally set to travel more vertical or up and down motion. On the Boxer, the cylinders come out the sides of the engine with the pistons using the back and forth motion. This definitely gives the bike a unique look, especially around these parts. The engine puts out a decent 91 horsepower and 110 foot-pounds of torque, and the Black Storm metallic paint makes this bike pop, and I like the look of the hard bags actually as well. The Roctane comes in around $20,000 for a price point and actually reminds me more of a Harley Road King, especially as the weight of this guy comes in over 800 pounds running weight, which is actually quite a bit more than I would prefer. So for those would be the first bikes I would start by looking at. Keep in mind, that's not that I'm saying I would buy these for sure. There's simply some ideas where I would start, but each bike has its advantages, and if you're looking for straight up performance numbers, you go with the Rocket. If you want something with that American styling close to a Harley, then you take the Indian. If it's price you're concerned about, there's the Suzuki. Or if you just want to stick out from the crowd as something more unique, or at least around here anyway, you do the BMW. But anyway, that's my thoughts for today. Let me know in the comments which bikes you would look at. And until next time, we'll see you later.